Many of you who have been in the astronomy community in Houston for a long time know Dr. Aaron Clevenson. And for those of you who haven't been in astronomy very long, you'll certainly run across Aaron quite frequently. So Dr. Aaron Clevenson is astronomy professor of astronomy at Lone Star College, Montgomery, and is the author of the astronomy textbook, Astronomy for Mere Mortals. He teaches solar system and stars and galaxies. In addition to his day job, Aaron also serves as the Astronomical League Observing Program Director, Astronomical League Platinum Master Observer, and is the author of a number of Astronomical League observing programs. So we all have him to thank for some of these programs that we participate in. Aaron has created two tools designed to help Astronomical League members manage their progress with the AL observing programs. One is a monthly publication in Microsoft Word that highlights objects by Observing Club that are visible in the evening sky that month. It's called What's Up Doc. And several of us have been reading that for years now, so we appreciate everything that you've done with that, Aaron. The other is a large spreadsheet in Microsoft Excel that lets you set your observing latitude and longitude, as well as the universal time of your observation session. And it will tell you information on which objects for all of the AL observing programs are visible. It lists the objects from highest altitude to lowest, has information on over 4,500 objects in all of the AL observing programs. Aaron is also past president of the North Houston Astronomy Club, has served as chairman for Astronomy Day at the George Observatory, and is also the observatory director at the Inspirity Observatory in Humble ISD, and he'll talk about that tonight as well. Aaron's philosophy of astronomy is best described by his quote near the door of the Inspirity Observatory, which says, "The universe awaits all those who make the journey. Enter here." And it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Dr. Aaron Clevenson. Aaron?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. So now we need to figure out how to share my screen.
I will stop sharing here. And it's yours for the taking.
Oh,
and I'll remind people while you're getting set up there, throughout the course of tonight's conversation, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat feature that we have in Zoom. Ask your questions there. I'll keep a running log of all of those questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation if Aaron's okay with that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wonderful.
So what I would ask is someone please confirm for me that you can see the Hubble telescope.
We do see that, yes.
All right, excellent. Okay, so hi, good to see you all again. See a lot of friendly faces that I've seen in the past, and of course with COVID have not seen in a long time. So it's kind of exciting to actually see some of you. I was going to start out with who the heck am I? That was for the people who don't know me, but Joe just read from my playbook. So I'm going to just skip that and go right in. So tonight I want to talk about two things, both passions of mine, both related to astronomy. One of them is the AL and one of them is the IO. And of course, Joe mentioned both of those. The AL is the Astronomical League and the IO is the Inspirity Observatory. So as a member of HAS, you are a member of the Astronomical League. So all the things I'm going to talk about related to that are available to you. And so if you want more information, you can just send me an email and we'll get after it. But you're already there. You're already a member. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Astronomical League is an international organization of amateur astronomers. And I don't remember the stats, but it's an incredible number of astronomy clubs from all over the world now. And an equally, even more incredible number of astronomers. IO, of course, is the Inspirity Observatory. It's located up in Humble. And sadly, our public nights are on the same nights as your club nights. So I'm very happy that it's actually nasty outside, because that means we don't have to be open to the public and I can be here. So it worked out really well. I was going to be here anyway, so I don't want to give you that impression. But so those are the things I'm going to talk about tonight. And the reason I put that Hubble telescope on is I can't think of any device that better represents astronomical observing. I mean, that just kind of says it all, and it's a wonderful tool. Of course, I'll have to change that, I guess, when the James Webb telescope is up, but that's okay. So let me start off. It's going to be very brief about the Inspirity Observatory. This is our humble little building in Humble. And we're very pleased with it. It does not have a dome, so it's not your typical looking observatory until you get inside. And when you get inside, you notice, oh, this looks better. 3 really nice telescopes. We're very proud of our telescopes. Just to give you the stats, because I know you're all astronomers, so you all care. The one on the left with the solar scope riding piggyback, that's a 90 millimeter Coronado. The main scope, though, is a 6-inch Takahashi, let me see if I can get this right, ortho-apochromatic refractor. An incredible scope. I mean, I've seen views in there, nothing like anything I've ever seen before. It's wonderful. The one in the middle is the 16-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain from Meade, not mounted in their traditional fork mount. And then the one on the right-hand side there is a 20-inch CDK from Planewave. And my advice is, if you have lots of money, go with the CDK from Planewave. They come bigger too. You can get up to a 1 meter now if you want. For those who have unlimited funding, ours is a 20-inch, and it's a wonderful telescope. What we discovered so far is that it's a little bit heavy. So originally we had it on a Paramount, and now we have it on a Paramount 2, and it's much happier on the bigger mount. However, however, those of you that are astronomers say this doesn't look right either, because you can't observe with the roof on. So I did want to include one good picture here of the nighttime sky with all of the scopes. I think they're all in the up position. Yes, they are. So all of our scopes in the up position where we're observing stuff. I think only on 1 or 2 occasions have actually had all 3 running on separate tasks. For public night, we typically use 2. I am pleased to say, though, we are having public nights in spite of COVID. What we are doing instead of the usual, milling people through the observatory, is we put a couple astronomers in the observatory running the telescopes and computers, and we actually broadcast outside to where we have a projector shooting up on a screen. So we can set people up in the parking lot, they're socially distanced, everybody has to wear masks. Works out pretty well. We do limit it to about 50 people. And so we've done a few of those. Initially in COVID, we did shut down, but we've decided this seems to be a pretty safe way to do it. So that's the observatory. I will make an offer that I made once before, and that is if you guys want to schedule a night after COVID, it's not as much fun when you can't look at and through the telescopes. But after COVID, if you guys want to set up an HAS night, just let me know, because I think I can get you all in. Anyway, move on to my second one, or second part of this, and this will go a bit slower, and that is the Astronomical League. And so the Astronomical League is just an organization, primarily all volunteers. There's a few staff people that run an office, but in general, we're all volunteers. And some of the things that they do is they do advocate dark sky. So they're part of the International Dark Sky Association, and they push that, which is a wonderful thing. They are also advocates for astronomical education, as we all are. So that's a very compatible goal. And that's the piece that I'm most involved with. So we'll talk about that in much, much more detail. They do have annual conventions that a few people go to from the Houston area. I've seen a few people there. They're all over the place. I tend to go to the ones that are in this part of the country, say from here to Arizona, maybe east, but kind of that. Whereas, they try to vary it all over the US. They do put out a reflector magazine. So as a member, you should be getting one of those. If you're not, talk to your treasurer / Alcor, whoever is responsible for communicating your membership list. Comes out, let me think, quarterly. And it's got some interesting articles in it, and of course announces all the awards. So we'll talk about those as well. Another thing that they do is they do provide astro notes. There may be a hyphen in that word, but it's guidelines and suggestions and things to help run your club or just do astronomy. Most of those have been rewritten since I assumed the role of observing program director, because that falls under our heading now. They have a store, and there's a few things I just need to mention. It's kind of a sales pitch, I suppose. But we have some absolutely wonderful observing manuals. And the reason I'm bragging on those is I'm now the editor-in-chief for the observing manuals. So they're great. They're diverse. One of them was developed by one of our Houston folks. It's the one on carbon stars, which was very exciting. And a number of them have been largely rewritten, some by me, but the idea is they're to help you, give you more information, and make the experience of going out and doing that observing a little more enjoyable. So they have those. The other thing that they have in the store that I think is useful, or through the store, is they have access to astronomy books. So if there's a book that you're looking for, you might want to try them. They have a deal with some bookstore, I'm not sure who, and they get them at a reduced price. So you might be able to get a book for a better price. I mean, if you're going to half price books, that's probably going to be better. But if you're looking for a book, that's another source that you might want to consider. And then what I want to spend most of my time talking about, because this is my true love, is the observing programs. And they have lots of observing programs. You notice I wrote it in bigger letters because I think it's a really big deal. But they have lots of observing programs and something for everybody. So I'm going to talk about these. I'm not going to talk about every one. You aren't going to let me have enough time to do that. But let me talk about them. So inside the observing program division, yes, we've decided to call ourselves a division of the Astronomical League. We break our observing awards up into these 6 different categories. One of them is observing programs themselves. So these are the main heavy-duty, beefy observing programs. They typically have 100 observations, although that varies widely. They typically take a year to complete, unless you're like me. I do, I don't know, 2-3 months of an observing program, and then I say, oh, what the heck? And I start spending all-nighters until I've completed them. So it doesn't take me a year. I just have to wait for them to get away from the sun so I can look at them. It does include certificates and pins, 8.5 by 11, suitable for framing, blah, 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 and lapel pins. So I know some people are into the pins, and so great opportunity. They're beautiful pins. In addition to that, we have observing awards. So awards are not like the programs. Usually it's something to do with observing, obviously, but they don't necessarily count towards the master observer, which we'll talk about. But they also don't necessarily take a year. They don't require very specific observations. Some do, but most do not. But they also have certificates and pins. They're big deals. Then we have special observing awards, and I know some of the folks from HAS have done some of these with us. If you think things like transits, solar eclipses, we've had special observing awards for those. They're called awards, even though it does require observing. And the only differentiation there is they often do not count towards the master observer either. But we generate certificates and pins to go with those as well, because those are really significant events. The one, had I been thinking about it ahead of time, that we missed was the Great Conjunction. And so it's not actually in that category, although that's where I would have liked it to have been, since it was an extremely rare event. But that's okay. It actually fit under the next heading, which is observing challenges. And so for observing challenges, no pins. We do have certificates. We have 2 varieties. One of those is with NASA, so they're called NASA Observing Challenges. The other one are called AL, Astronomical League, Observing Challenges. And if any of you are doing the one for Mars Perseverance, the landing of Perseverance, which is coming up this month, if you're working on that one, kudos and power to you, because we have been, I don't want to say kicked out, that's a little too violent, but we've been kicked out of the education consortium that we were in with NASA, where that funding was coming from. And so if they're not going to help us do it, we're not going to do any more of theirs. We're going to do ours instead. And I'm working on possibly another route where we might be able to do those. But we've done, I think the number is 7. This is the 7th one. And the due date is coming up. It's till March 15th or something. But you have plenty of time. But again, it's certificates only. While I'm on this, one I would like to mention, no, I don't want to mention it yet. I'll mention it in a little bit. In addition to that, we have observing certificates, which are certificates. And these are odds and ends. They're things that we want to do. We want to recognize people for doing them. They don't fit in with the programs or awards. So we have certificates for those. And then we do have downloadable certificates. And the best example I can think of for that is if you do a Messier Marathon, we have ready-made Messier Marathon certificates. All you have to do is plug in a number and get somebody to sign it. So But Messier Marathon doesn't count toward any of the observing programs because it very explicitly says in the Messier program, the marathon doesn't count. So there are those as well. And there's probably 6 downloadable certificates, something like that. So lots of different options, and I haven't even talked about what the options are. But let me give you an example of some of these. Into the moon. So as I said, there's something for everybody. If you're into the moon, there are 3 different lunar programs. And I'm going to mention some of these here, and we won't cover them when I go through the list. So there's lunar, which in my mind has got to be the simplest observing program we offer, because all you do is observe different features, different times of the month. And then you just put down the date and time you observe them. Well, that's almost too simple. But anyway, so it's out there. It's a good place to start for somebody who's never done this before. I think it was one of the first few that I did. The nice thing about the moon is it's always available. It comes back month after month. It's so bright, you can't miss it. And even with a small telescope, you get to see incredible detail. So lunar is cool. There is a Lunar 2 for those who are gluttons for punishment. It does necessitate planning and timing much more than the other one, and has tougher requirements. Both of them have about 100 observations. And we do have a new one, which I'll mention a little bit later in more detail, called Lunar Evolution. Actually, I'll do it here. If you think about it, just like the Earth has gone through different phases in its evolution, its development, the moon has done the same thing. And yeah, we can't study it quite as easily as we can here on Earth, but because there is less erosion going on, or the types of erosion we have on the Earth anyway, and the surface doesn't keep changing like it does here on the Earth, right, with volcanoes and all that. So you get to study it in what we can actually see in a telescope. So it's a pretty cool program. I just did that one fairly recently and really enjoyed it. So if you're at all into the moon, I recommend that strongly. We do have 2 solar ones. Solar, which is called Sunspotters, which, as its name implies, is very much focused on sunspots. And as we hopefully sometime soon will be moving out of our minima, you may come back to the point where you can actually start following major sunspot groups and things like that. And then the second one is hydrogen alpha solar, which you need a hydrogen alpha telescope for. But if you have one or can borrow one, it's a pretty cool program too, because there you get to see all the prominences and flares and things that are going on. So it's pretty cool. In addition to that, I counted, I think, 6 solar system related observing programs. That's a picture of Mars. And we have a Mars program. I'm going to come back to something we have just adopted that gets us one more solar system program. But we have the old basic one, which is kind of a little bit of everything in the solar system. And I kept saying 100, but that one only requires 25, I believe. So it's not quite as bad. And we have one for asteroids. We have one for comets. We have one for meteors. So no matter what you're into, there's something there. And different observing programs to give you a goal. I liked the comment that Joe made early on, which was it gave him direction. That's why I got started in the observing programs. It gives me something to do where I have a target list. Because, you know, as we all know, you get out there with your telescope, there's thousands of things to see. So you can see anything you want. But I know that there are some that I see every time I'm out when they're up, you know, like the Orion Nebula, things like that. Well, yeah, they're cool. But if I don't have something that's pushing me, I tend to look at the same stuff over and over, and that's boring. So I like the idea that they give me some challenges, they give me some things that I would have never thought of, which is kind of cool. There are at least 6 that deal strictly with galaxies. In fact, there are so many that if any of you are thinking about submitting an idea for a new observing program, don't do it on galaxies, because I think we're about topped out on the galaxy place. But there are a bunch of them. The other one I'm mentioning on here is constellations. There are 3 of those as well. So constellation northern skies, which is us, constellation southern skies, which you have to be where you can see the South Pole to be able to accomplish that one. So not very many people have done that one, but it's out there. And the third one, the newest one, is alternate constellations. And it is actually pretty cool. And we'll talk about that one definitely later. So I'm going to skip it for now, but we'll come back to that. But the neat thing about these programs is they use different tools. Some of them are just naked eye. Some of them use binoculars or telescopes. Some are special, as in you have to build things like analemma, where you actually have to make an analemma, or at least the device to measure an analemma. And like radio astronomy, where you're expected to actually go out and build some of the simpler radio telescopes. Which I should mention something right here. If you've been to the observatory, hopefully in about 6 months, you need to come back and visit us again, because we are in the process of finalizing the design and build. Well, we haven't started building yet, but finalizing the design for an absolutely gorgeous radio telescope. It's going to be not your typical dish one. It's going to be a double dipole antenna. And so we're going to be able to listen to Jupiter and the sun and things like that. But we didn't follow their specs. We did our own. And so it's going to have 4 25-foot tall poles, and just absolutely awesome. So I'm excited. I'll keep you all posted, and you all need to come back and visit, because it should be pretty cool. But anyway, I'm off topic. My apologies. We also covered diverse topics. So I mentioned radio astronomy and spectroscopy is a new one, which is really cool if you're into that. Apparently, well, I thought it was difficult. I've done that one too. I thought it was difficult, but I'm also the only person that has earned the certification. So I suspect it's really difficult, but it wasn't that bad. But anyway, it's pretty cool. We do lots of programs that are related to scientific data. We have NOVA, we have variable stars that we do tracking on, all kinds of things like that. Target NEO, which would be near Earth asteroids. So it's lots of cool stuff. And then we have some other off the wall different ones. We do have a Dark Sky Advocate Award, which I think some of you folks ought to have, like Deborah, because you guys do all this stuff on dark sky stuff. You probably qualify already and just don't know it. And we also have a Library Telescope Award, and that's one that I have not gotten involved in, but would like to more so. The idea is get telescopes into the hands of libraries, and then they can rent them out just like a book, and people can try it, which is really cool. And there's a design, they're little, I think they're 4.5-inch tabletop Dobbs. So they're really cool. Okay, so just lots of optional things there. And I kind of skipped it, but I'm going to come back to it. The Master Observer Progression. So some people have been doing a lot of these observing programs, and we decided it was time to go beyond the recognition we used to have. So when I joined the Astronomical League, joined the North Houston Astronomy Club, we only had a Master Observer. Well, now we have Observer. That's for the newbies, so it gives you a place to start. We have Master Observer. Then we have Advanced Observer. That's for people who go beyond Master Observer and they're starting to get into very specific topics, like comets, as an example. Then we have 3 super levels of Master Observer. So they are Silver, Gold, and Platinum. So Joe mentioned, yes, I do have the Platinum Award. Requires, those are designed to be Lifetime Achievement Award type awards. And so we don't expect people to get them very often, but we certainly are rooting for people to be able to get those. So we have those. We also have a binocular Master Observer. And some of you might be interested. We now have a Master Imager Award. So we realize that all along we've been very visual in our observing programs. And some of them allowed you to use cameras and take images, and some of them sort of almost required images, like Herschel 2. They're just so faint, it's hard to see unless you have a huge light bucket. So it's helpful if you can actually take images of them. But now we've actually developed some programs to work with that. So we've branched into imaging. So if any of you really experienced imagers out there would like to get involved, we are working on expanding that program, and we need ideas. So send me an email. Excuse me. Okay, so there's about 8 of those programs out there. So I'm not going to go through all of these other than show them to you. So I'll give you a little bit of time to read them, but I'm not going to read them to you. But these are the observing programs that we have currently. And right now we have in excess of 70 different observing programs and awards. And so it's not quite one per line, but pretty much it is. I'll hit some highlights as we go. So one of them that I think is really cool, we've had this for a couple of years now, but it's Astronomy Before the Telescope. I was intrigued by this one. I didn't create it, somebody else did, but I was intrigued by it because if you think back to great astronomers like Tycho Brahe, he didn't have a telescope. And so he did some pretty awesome observing, right? He gave all that data to Kepler that let Kepler define or describe how the planets orbit, all of that without using a telescope. So it's amazing to me. And that particular observing program focuses in on some of those devices like astrolabes, and I can't even tell you what they're all called because I don't remember now, but they're really cool. Lots of options there, not too expensive because most of them you can just make. I did mine on cardstock and laminated it, so it wasn't expensive at all. So lots of options there. Let me see if there's anything else there I really want to mention. Going to do alternate constellations in a bit. So let me just go on to the next page. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. I guess one that's not on here that I need to mention, I'll do it when I get there, but I want to mention the Galileos Toes. So back on the 400th anniversary of Galileo looking at the night sky with his telescope, we created a Galileo observing program. And it's pretty basic because the idea was we want to celebrate Galileo. And so there's only 13 requirements, because if you look at the list of things he did, those are the big 13. There's a few more, but those are the big 13. So we do include all of those in that program. And the idea is, instead of using your super hoo-ha, extra powerful, high magnification telescope, we want you to use a low magnification telescope. So you can do it with binoculars and get the binocular version, or you can do it with a very, very low power, 20 power. And so you can't even see the rings of Saturn. It looks like a football, but that's okay. The idea was you were replicating what Galileo was seeing. And his telescopes were not very powerful. And even the ones that started to get up there magnification, lousy glass. So, a lot of challenges for Galileo. But there's two versions, and I only mention this. One of them, so that was Galileo. Galileo's Toes, Toes stands for, excuse me, transits, occultations, eclipses, and shadow transits. And if you know much about Jupiter, you know that all four of those things happen between Jupiter and Jupiter's 4 Galilean moons. And so the goal there is to catch all four of those conditions for all four of the moons on both sides. So ingress and egress, do both. It's a challenge, and not every one of them is available every year. So it's actually something that you just have to start planning ahead and catch them as you can. I think we've given 1 or 2 certificates maybe for Galileos Toes level 1. Level 2 is even more of a challenge, and that is every 6 years, Jupiter's Galilean moons do those things not just with Jupiter, but with each other. And so you actually get moons that go in front of other moons. And it only happens twice in Jupiter's orbit, but when it does, they are really, really cool. So Galileo's Toes 2 is designed to do those mutual interactions between the moons. And we haven't given any of those yet because we came out with it since the last opportunity to do those. So it's coming back in the next couple of years. I'm not sure the exact date, so I hope some of you will consider that because I think it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to it. The one that's not on here is I wanted to mention, we also have something now called the Herschel Society at the Astronomical League. And what we discovered was we have Herschel 400, that's 400 objects on the Herschel list. We have a Herschel 2, which is 400 more, actually 399 more. There's one overlap. And that's great, that's 800 objects. The problem is Herschel's list has about 2,400 objects on it. And people started recommending we should have a Herschel 3 and a Herschel 4. And I said, yeah, okay, so we'll have to have Herschel 8 to get them all. We're not going to do that. So what we did instead was we created the Herschel Society. And you can get sort of the silver version or the gold version by doing 1,200 or all 2,400 and change. And we've got people who are doing that because they were doing it anyway. They were going out and taking images of all these different Herschel objects. The problem with Herschel's list is some of the objects appear not to exist. So, there's a little editing that went on in coming up with the actual list. But anyway, cool stuff. Let me continue on and see if there's anything real amazing here that I need to mention. Well, we do have a mentor award, and this is something that some of you should do for some of your fellow members. So it's an award, it's a certificate, and there is no pin that goes with it. So it is just a certificate, but it's a way to recognize people who, those are the experienced folks who are always there to help the new folks. So, I heard some of the wonderful things that you guys are planning, and that's awesome. That's mentoring. And it's just a nomination by somebody in the club for somebody else in the club. So if you have someone, just send it to me. The instructions are on the Astronomical League website. But basically, it's just email me with, hey, this person should be considered for a mentor award. Real easy, no requirements. We'd like to hear what they did, but basically it's your personal statement of this person deserves it. So that's kind of cool. And I want to just mention that in passing. I mentioned the NASA observing challenges, and I'm only going to say again, I hope you got some good pictures of Mars, and I'm hoping you're on its last apparition. Of course, it's still going on. And I hope you're going to submit one of those and do some kind of an outreach event associated with it so that we can submit you for the Perseverance NASA Observing Challenge. And I now realize there's one I've skipped, but we'll talk about it on one of the later slides. So let me keep going. Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to talk about them all. I want to kind of hit the highlights. One of the observing programs that I'm going to mention is sketching, and it's an observing award. It does have a pin associated with it as well as a certificate. I was hoping this was going to be the start of a whole group of awards designed to make observers better observers. And we very strongly believe, and I know some of you don't, and that's okay, but we strongly believe that if you're a visual observer, you really need to be sketching what you're seeing. Even if you're not an artist. I'm certainly not an artist, and my sketches are horrendous. I'm embarrassed to show them to my students. But when you sketch, you will end up catching details that you won't catch otherwise. And it sounds silly, but it's true. I maintain it's because in your brain, you have a little filter that says, you didn't really see that. Well, when you're doing the sketching, it somehow bypasses the filter, and you'll end up drawing in details that otherwise you would say, nah, I never saw that. So if you haven't tried it, I'd like to encourage you all to try sketching just in general. I have sketched at least the first time every time I've observed an object. So I haven't done it for all of them because, after you've sketched Saturn, 3 or 4 times, there's really no point in continuing to sketch unless you're going for the art, and I'm not good enough to do that. So that one was worth mentioning. I did mention the spectroscopy, and I'll mention it just again because it doesn't require a whole bunch of equipment. I could cheat. I had the spectroscope at the observatory, so I had a good spectroscope. But you can do it with very simple tools because the requirements are actually pretty, let's say on the simple side as far as spectroscopy is concerned. But it involves looking at a bunch of different stars, the sun, looking at planets, things like that, just to see what spectra you get and what you can pick out of those spectra. It's pretty cool. And I do know for in the neighborhood of $100, $200, you can get pieces that you can add to your eyepiece before your camera, where you can actually get spectra. And there are some inexpensive, if not free, tools out there that you can use on the computer to analyze those spectra as well. Okay, I thought I was going to have a question, but all right, let me just keep going here. The youth astronomer, I want to point that out because we will talk about that in detail. And so I just want to mention that sort of in passing because I think it's really cool and it's something new. And by the way, let me just pause here for a second. So Joe, how long can I go?
You have as much time as you'd like. So they're not going to kick us out of here anytime soon.
Okay, well, the reason I asked is any of you that have heard my presentations, they tend to be short of the time limit I have anyway. So I just wanted to know if I should be concerned or not.
No, not at all.
Well, I only have a couple more slides, so I may not have a lot more to say, but I hope there'll be lots of questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me just keep going. Maybe. Let's try that again. Okay, so there we go. So the last official cycle for the Astronomical League was during the summer of 2020. Now I want to make sure I have the date right. We had a council meeting, and of course it was a Zoom meeting, just like this, instead of in person. And at that meeting, they do all the business that they have to do, the big business for the Astronomical League. But in addition to that, and as time goes on, it's been a bigger and bigger piece, the observing program division comes in and says, all right, well, we've had people make proposals, and we've told you what we think of these proposals. And in general, we tend to be pretty positive. And we want you to adopt them. And so sometimes we have people who are willing to sponsor the first year, which is the big expense because we have to buy the pins. The annual cost is actually fairly low and conservative. But these were the ones that were adopted into 2020. We adopted 5. It ended up 4 of those were sponsored, which was wonderful because that means it kept our costs down. I mentioned imaging. We had some of our imagers. One of them was Robert Brighton. I don't know if anybody knows him. He's in North Houston. He was involved with developing foundations of imaging. So this is the first of our imaging programs. And the idea was not to make a master imager out of you yet, but to show you the ropes, to get you started, to let you try some of the different techniques and also different targets, because every target, well, every class of target is very different. Taking a picture of the moon is a completely different realm than taking a picture of a galaxy. And so the idea was provide a fundamental foundation building course that you can come in, do it. I haven't done it yet, by the way. Do it and see if there's anything there that you really like. So those of you that are already imagers, you're way beyond that program. That program is not required as part of the Master Imager Observing Award. So you don't have to have it, but it was a way to get other people involved. So if you are just starting out in imaging, it might be valuable and useful because it'll give you some pointers and give you some things to try and test out your techniques. And it covers, of course, the software because, you know, when I do visual, I just need something to point the telescope and then I look. But when you're doing imaging, you need to process those images. So it covers all of those applications as well. I mentioned the Master Imager Award. I know some of you are Master Observers already. The Imager Award is very specific to imaging. So the Master Observer requires 10, the Master Imager requires 10, but they all have to be imaging-based programs or the imaging version program. So some of our programs like Messier are not available to imaging and won't be because they're trying to do a fundamental concept, which is the whole idea of viewing and also finding. So you can't even use a go-to telescope. You have to actually star hop. But there are plenty of imaging optional programs out there. And so if you do them by imaging, it will count towards the Master Imager Award. There are some requirements, just like Master Observer had, 5 required observations. Master Imager requires you to look at different classes of objects, so it also has 5 required. The third one that was approved was the Lunar Evolution Observing Program. So I want to draw your attention to the pin, which is over here, because although it looks really bizarre, I think it is, let's see if I get this right, the US Geological Survey, I think that's who it was, which of course this is not part of the US, but that's okay, did some work on the moon, and they classified different areas of the moon coming from different eras in the moon's past. It was really cool. So the different colors represent those different eras. And the idea of this particular program is, yeah, we've looked at the moon. You may be done lunar and lunar too, but have you thought about when and why and how all these things interrelate? And some of it's as simple as in which one is it? I think it's the lunar program that asks, may not be, might be actually like the solar system program. But anyway, one of the more fundamental programs asks, how do you know which of these 2 craters is older? And it's 2 craters where they overlap. And the answer is, well, the one who has the broken wall has to be the older one because the newer one has a complete wall. So if you think of that, that's an example. Those probably or possibly could have been from the same era in the moon's past. But it's really cool. The program is really cool. And if you're a lunatic, I recommend it strongly. I had a great time doing it. And I did it through imaging, just to appeal to the imagers as well. One of the other new ones we have is a Library Telescope Award. And so the Astronomical League has been passing out library telescopes for years now. They have someone who sponsors them. And the idea is a club can apply for one. We never have up at North Houston, but somebody in Houston has. I can't remember who it was. It was you guys? All right, cool.
I believe Bram Wiseman was the one who put it in. And yeah, we ended up getting one that we donated to the Houston Public Library.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, now, in addition to that program, we're going to recognize people who do things related to library telescopes. So I don't know how much effort Bram put in, but he might already be eligible for that. So it's really cool. And then the last one I want to mention is alternate constellations. So I don't know about you, I do not recognize what constellation this is, because it's one of the alternates, and so it's not in my list of current constellations. I know it looks like a sickle, but I really don't remember what it is. But it's an example. It was the best example of what we consider to be alternate constellations. And that observing program consists of two parts. One part is obsolete constellations. That was my original thought when I was working with the guy who was creating it, was do obsolete ones. And these are ones like, oh, I don't know that Messier ever did it, but I'll use him as an example. Someone like Messier would have said, this is a constellation. And lots of people did that. You know, all the astronomers did that. Usually they name things after their king, you know, their benefactors. And that's all great, but we didn't keep them. And the best example that many of us might be aware is the Argo Navis. So the Argos, the ship that Jason used, was a huge constellation. It's now 5. So officially it's now 5. Boötis is one of those. Nope, wrong one. Pupus is one of those. It's the poop deck, original ship. So, you know, that would be a good example of one of the obsolete ones. I don't even know if it's on the list. That's half of it. The other half, and I'm glad he added this because it really does create a whole new dimension to observing, is constellations from other cultures. And by other, I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about Greek or Babylonian, because they're basically the same constellations. So if you think about it, we use largely the Greek constellations, at least for the Northern Hemisphere constellations. And there's a lot of them, and, you know, like Orion and some of these other folks, great constellations. And of course, they're official now, right? The IAU said these are the 88 constellations. So we're stuck with them. And there won't be any more, because when they did that, they didn't say the stick figure is the constellation. They said this piece of geography up there in the sky is a constellation. And so around Orion, there's this border that takes in a whole bunch of sky. And when you look at all 88, there's no free sky left. So we have the 88 we're probably going to have forever. Or at least until supernovas and time eventually moves the stars around, which I won't see that. So different cultures, things like Native American, Chinese, Indian, as in India. What are some of the other ones? There are some South American ones that are actually pretty cool. So it looks at these different cultures. The one I had the most trouble with was Australian, because in Australia, they did a lot of looking at dark nebulae in the Milky Way. And a lot of them were fairly far south, and I just can't get that here. So it was an issue. Did you have a question, Bill? I saw your hand go up there briefly. Okay, just checking. Don't want to ignore anybody. Anyway, so I recommend that one. It's pretty cool. And it's, you know, it's knowledge. The observing's not hard because you've done it anyway. It's the same observing we do, except under different names and slightly different structures. Okay, and then this year we were a little bit different than usual. So in the Astronomical League, there are 4 of us who are observing program directors. And it's not truly, I guess it is hierarchical. I was going to say we have this hierarchy, and underneath those are all these observing program coordinators. And so every program has a coordinator. Some coordinators do 2 or 3. The directors, though, are responsible for trying to herd these cats and keep everything organized and standardized as much as possible. And so this year we've been particularly active, and we've actually come up with stuff since the summer of 2000. And you are the first to hear about some of these, because some of these just went into effect. So the first one I want to mention is the Youth Astronomer Observing Program. So we've had a kid program, 13 and under, 10 and under, excuse me, 10 and under, called Sky Puppies. And thanks to our partnership with NASA, we were able to provide that free. So at some point, those funds are going to run out, and I'm just going to have to start charging people again. So what I would say is, if any of you know kids who are 10 or under, and you would like a Sky Puppies program, get after it. Send me an email, and they're free. And thank you for holding that up, Joe. Everybody look at Joe, because he's got one of the Sky Puppy manuals. So that's history. I mean, we've had that for a long time. Lately, it's been free, I think, for the past 4 years. Thank you, NASA. So it was a really cool thing. A couple of years ago, I'm not sure exactly when, we had some adults, and these people would have liked to have been in your WSIG group, because they were all women. They were just starting out, and they said, we don't know anything about astronomy. We need a program that helps us, to let the complete novice get into astronomy. And we talked, and I said, have at it. And so these 3 women came up with this absolutely great program. It's called Beyond Polaris. I take credit for the name, but they did all the work. But Beyond Polaris, and it is wonderful. It is a great program. Not a whole lot of observing. Yeah, there's observing in it, but the main idea is to get you to understand how the sky works and why things happen the way they do. So if any of you are novices, I recommend that one strongly. It's out there on the AL website. But we recognize that, okay, so we've got 10 and under, and we have essentially adults. And we're ignoring that group in the middle. So somebody said, we need a youth organization observation award. So we came up with this observing program called Youth Astronomer. So the Youth Astronomer Observing Program, it's for people 17 and under. So it hits those teenage years, and it's true observing. It requires 100 objects. I think it's 100, just like a regular observing program, but they get to pick what they want to go observe from the different observing programs. So you could say, well, I'm going to do Messier because they're just so cool. I'm going to do Messier. And so you would do 5 Messier objects. And then they say, well, I like the moon, so I'm going to do 5 lunar objects. And you put all those together, you get up to 100. So there's 20 of them. So you get to 100, and that will earn you the pin. The idea is it'll send the kids out, and they get to look at the different programs and decide which ones they might be interested in. They get to try them. 5 is not much of a commitment. And if they like it, then great. Take those 5, turn it into 100, and go get the lunar observation as well. So we came up with the Youth Astronomer Observing Program. Like I said, I think it's really, really cool. One that we have, I'm going to skip around here. One of them on this list is the Great Conjunction AL Observing Challenge. So if you participated in that, all you had to do was either sketch or image the Great Conjunction. I've seen some really great pictures. I've seen some really horrible pictures, but we don't take off for art. So, and then do an outreach activity of some kind. And because of COVID, we're really lax on what we mean by outreach activity. In the past, it used to be outreach event. And that meant big deal, telescopes, people, up close and personal, which were great, just not practical during COVID. So now we've shrunk it quite a bit. So if you tend to share things with your family or neighbors or whatever, those all counted. We had people who were doing things on Facebook, like live streaming or whatever. I mean, just all kinds of really cool stuff. So all of those count. It's not too late. The deadline is very fast approaching. I think it's 10 days from now. If I remember, December, January, February, yeah. Well, I think it was the 21st though, wasn't it? So, all right, so maybe 3 weeks from now, but that's okay. You do still have time to submit it if you want to apply for that. It does involve a certificate only, but we would love to hear from you. And then the one that's going on right now, which is the Perseverance Lander NASA Observing Challenge. which of course that one's still available too. That one will be available till mid-March. And they're going to land in a week or two on Mars. And there, the observing challenge is you have to get a picture of Mars. So hopefully you've already taken it because it's getting smaller, but a picture of Mars that shows where they're going to land, and then mark it, they will be here, and then do an outreach activity related to that as well. And like I said, this may be a big deal, a collector's item, because I think this could possibly be our last NASA observing challenge. What we have adopted instead are AL observing challenges. And so the Great Conjunction was one of those, but we have another one coming up. It's just starting now. It is officially to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Astronomical League. And the best way to think of it is Jupiter. So we're just starting a new apparition of Jupiter. You have to get up early in the morning if you want to see it now. But from now until actually March of next year, we have an apparition. We're going to get to see lots of Jupiter. So in this particular observing challenge, it's a little bit more than the usual one. It has 75 required observations, but you basically go through the whole process. And most of it is very much oriented towards Jupiter. There's a little bit of Galileos Toes in there because we want you to do that too, but very little. And of course, anything you do in this challenge is applicable to the other observing programs. So if you do some Galileos Toes, you get to count those observations there as well. So we're really excited about that one. We'll see if anybody takes us up on it, but it should be pretty neat. So that's the new stuff. And like I said, that's brand new. They've just gone up on the website. So at least the 75th anniversary has just gone up on the website, as well as the Youth Astronomer. So take a look. And I didn't put it up here in writing. I suppose I can drop that in the chat. But which is the Astronomical League website. It's astroleague.org. So it's not the whole thing. It's just astroleague.org. And I invite you to go out and take a look. We're under Observe, a listing that shows them all. So you can just go out there and pick what you want to look at. And with that, I will turn it back and answer questions.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Appreciate the overview. And like I said, this is a wonderful organization, and the observing programs just by themselves make it a great program. But there's so many more things that we get out of the Astronomical League, certainly, and we appreciate you touching on those. I'm going to share my screen here just briefly.
Okay, so let me stop sharing or whatever I need to do to complement that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wow, big group of people. Hello, yes. Everybody.
And just to let people know, here's the website that Aaron was mentioning, astroleague.org. If you go to, well, if I go to the homepage here, up at the top, there's a tab that says Observe. And under Observe, you can go to the observing programs listed alphabetically. And to get to one of the questions that Debbie had, and Debbie, do you want to go ahead and ask that question?
Yeah, so I mean, there are some that are clearly beginning programs, some are clearly extremely advanced. Do you guys set up a real hierarchy of difficulty? We definitely have novices that need to know where to start, and you've mentioned some of those. And obviously there's a lot in the middle that are specialized for just whatever you're interested in. But the other thing is also equipment. For instance, you can do the Herschel program with a small scope, but now I've finally got some aperture. I understand how much prettier galaxies are with larger equipment. So do you have any advice in your programs on equipment to make that actually makes a program very rewarding?
So Joe was actually just pointing at that. So Joe, go back and point at it again,
sure.
Just so I can talk about it a little bit while you're doing it. Underneath Observe up here, the main thing is this list alphabetically, so 2 down from where he's pointing right now. And that is the complete list. We don't have to go there, but
okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll just jump around. But above that are the 2 things you just asked about. One of them is based on equipment needed, and one of them is based on experience level. I'm going to give you a different answer, though. I know those are out there. They're a little bit out of date is the only reason I'm not going to use those as my big pushy thing here. But up at the top of the list over there that we still have in the background here you'll notice the Herschel Societies there, but I wanted to just mention real briefly this master observer progression. Could you click on that just and take me to that page? So these are our super programs. They're not specific programs, but we call them special programs. And if you take a look at the chart over there with the blue boxes, so binoculars kind of separate, imaging is kind of separate because we haven't fleshed out the imaging one yet. But if you look at the rest of that, the left-hand side of that box, those are the different steps in the Master Observer progression. And Master Observer is completely separate and independent from the Observer Award. But if I were talking to someone who's just starting out, I would recommend they take a look at the Observer Award, because that's the first level, that's the entry level. That's where we want people to go in and try it. And down the bottom of the page you're on, Joe, is a link to that if you want to just scroll down and click on the link. So now all the way down.
Oh, sorry.
And that was it. That was fast. Okay, stop right there. Go back up a little bit if you. You're moving way too fast. Okay, so no, I want to go back to Observer. Sorry.
So down here it says Observer Award webpage.
That one.
Okay.
And now scroll down a little, like one screen worth. Keep going. Rules and requirements. Okay, so for this one, you only have to do 5 different programs to get this. So some novice isn't going to say, I want to get all 5. But if you're a novice, this is a great place to look first. And Messier is on there only because Messier is always there. That's kind of the place to start. But in addition to that, I think the one that's probably most useful, most valuable to somebody just starting out is the Constellation Hunter. I'm a little biased because I actually did write that one. But the reason I think it's important is all of you astronomers know the constellations. Not all of them. And you may not use them because you have a go-to scope, right? So once you get it set up, you don't care. But you still need to be able to get around the sky. And the way you do that is with the constellations. And so that Constellation Hunter, I think, is the place that I would recommend anybody get started. The second one I mentioned in my talk, which was Lunar, and that's only because it's so easy to get to the moon. It's so easy to find stuff on the moon. You just need a good map that shows you your way around. And the same thing sort of applies to the solar system one. Both of those are actually 2 of the first 5 that I did. And the nice thing about solar system, yeah, it doesn't come back month after month like the moon does, but all of those objects are nearby. They're very accessible. So I think they're great for anybody. But then, if you were going after an observer, you would do those 4 because those are required. And then you get to pick one off the next list. So youth will be on here eventually, but if you're 10 and under, you would do Sky Puppy. Youth would do the youth program. And if you're an adult, it's not on here, but Beyond Polaris should be on this list as well. And then the others were ones where, talking with the coordinator, talking with people who had done the programs, we felt were appropriate starter level programs. So Galileo, I think, is great just because of Galileo. And it's not overly demanding. I mean, you're doing it at 20 power, so it's a pretty straightforward program. Sketching is self-explanatory, and I talked about that earlier. Universe Sampler and Urban are both great. Urban, if you happen to live anywhere near Houston, you probably are at least suburban. And the requirement there is you can't see the Milky Way, which that's all of suburban Houston. So, and the nice thing about that is you can do it from home. Universe Sampler is nice because it's a selection of different objects out there in deep space that you can go look for and find. And they're not hard, challenging objects. They're reasonable objects. 2 in the View made the list under my objection, but it is on the list. The idea there is you're looking for 2 things that happen to be in the same field of view. And I'll put the caveat on there if you have a Dob, because you need wide field. Some of them, not so much. The best example I can think of is the double cluster up there in Perseus. That's a great one. 2 open clusters, they're fairly close together, so you can get them in the same view in a modest telescope. But if you have a big light bucket that's not a Dobsonian, you probably have a much smaller piece of sky that you can see. And what I found when I did that one was I would have to move. I would find part of it in the telescope, and then I actually have to move the telescope to see the rest of it. So I did not enjoy that as much as I would have liked to, and I thought that made it not basic, you know. But I think those are great programs to start with. And again, the Messier only because they're such great objects. Some of them are a little hard to see, but.
Yeah, Aaron, and that's a great point. One of the things that we've been doing here at the club is encouraging many of our new members and longtime novice members to actually start with the Beyond Polaris. So we'll start taking a look at some of these other programs as well. But we've been meeting at least once every other month
Cool.
to kind of go over the program, you know, the requirements, what it's like, and then meeting occasionally to answer questions that some people have. And I think we've had a few people complete that program within the last several months. So
Awesome.
it's always
Awesome. Yeah.
always exciting to see our new members who are brand new to astronomy starting off in these programs and getting their first pin and certificate.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. And then I believe Joe Dellinger had a question too. Joe, do you want to come off mute and ask about the, I think it was a suggestion for a program.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest something I could think of that would be cool is trying to see motion in the sky. So there's a handful of stars that you can see in a reasonable size instrument that if you look at it over years, you can very clearly see the motion. So as a volunteer with the George, one of the things I've done is we often have classes and stuff that come once a year, and I'll show them 61 Cygni and ask them to sketch it, and then when they come back in a year, bring their sketch with them, and then I show it to them again, and you can see it's moved, which is really cool. And then there's Porrima is one that you can see over a few years is rotated. You know, Alpha Centauri would be easy, except that it's, you know, not up here, but I don't know. I mean, it would be a longer term one, but I got into it enough that I've actually been taking a photograph of 61 Cygni once a year for about 8 years now. And it's just sort of cool to be able to show people the sequence of photos and how it's changed.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a wonderful idea. And I will get in touch with you because I want to talk more about what some of the objects might be. So.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a great expert. It's just I read about 61 Cygni and thought, well, that'd be fun. And it's actually sort of cool to see a moving star.
Well, and all right, so let me tell you what I'm thinking. So the process for submitting a proposal, if you want to submit a formal proposal, if you want to just toss it into my lap, I make no guarantees, but I'm more than happy to pursue it because you've intrigued me. But a formal proposal, they work with one of the directors. It doesn't have to be me, but I've done a lot of them. And our goal is to get it into well, first off, we'll tell you if we don't think it'll fly. So, you know, the idea is we're saving you a lot of trouble. Some people don't want to accept that recommendation and they still want to do all the work and then it doesn't fly. But, you know, we've done enough of them now that we know pretty much what's going to make it through council and what won't. We also make recommendations on whether it needs to be a program, an award, a special program, you know, all that. Anyway, we work with the person submitting it, and then we will actually take it and represent them, unless they want to go, but we'll take it and represent them at a council meeting where the council will either go yay or nay. They have approved almost everything that we've taken to them, but now because we work with the coordinators, we don't take stuff to them that we know they're not going to approve.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, I'd have to think about it a bit. I mean, I guess I could just do some searches. I picked 61 Cygni because it's nice and high and easy, but I suspect there's a few others you could do. The other nice thing about 61 Cygni is in the last few years, it was passing nearby another star. So there was something to see the motion with.
Ah, cool.
Which made it particularly easy.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, though, is a typical observing program requires 100 observations. So if you said, at least for the stars, we want you to do 4 each minimum.
That's going to take 25 years.
But no, if it's only 4 each, that's only 4 years. Maybe. Yeah, depends on the stars. But, you know, I'm just trying to work through some numbers in my head here. So if you did all stars, it would be 25. But I would think you would move things into that category that you possibly were not thinking of, such as comets, asteroids. I mean, I was at the George and I saw an asteroid move in the eyepiece. It was that close to Earth. I could see it move. That freaked me out. But it was really cool. So I think there are things like that. Of course, planet motions.
Oh, I see. Like extend it to more moving things.
Right, which means you'd need less stars.
Okay, yes. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, just make it motion in general. So I wanted to mention that. That's where I was going with all that.
I must admit, I'm obviously intrigued by seeing things moving because I got into asteroid hunting for about 10 years. And we discovered quite a few asteroids, but actually the very most memorable nights were ones where I remember the asteroid we named Sumner's for the person at the Houston Museum of Natural Science who got the George Observatory to happen. So that one, I discovered it on one night, and I just shot a field and then processed the data like the next day and saw, oh my goodness, this pretty 17th magnitude bright for us and moving quite fast. And so then the next night, it was like a Girl Scout night so there was a group of Girl Scouts. And so it did visual with the Girl Scouts. And then they went and did a nature hike. And then I said, well, I'm going to set up to image, and then you can come back and you can see whether I can get a second night on this asteroid. And it was the one time out of the 10 years where an asteroid I had just discovered myself and was an unknown object, and each download of the camera, 30-second exposures, you could see it in the raw data, unprocessed, and you could see the motion over 30 seconds. And so I showed it all, and that was the only time that happened, was that one night where it's like, I discovered that asteroid, it's still unknown, and there it is moving from photo to photo to photo. Cool.
Wow, that is really neat. I got to tell you my story, only because you brought it up. So I'm envious. At the Inspirity Observatory, we have looked for asteroids, and we have never found a new one. We don't have quite as much depth as you guys do. But I said, what the heck, let's give this a try. So we did, and on one night, we weren't actually looking for asteroids, but on one night, I was doing an observation for target NEO, the near-Earth asteroids. So we had a specific target. We knew what we were looking for, and we knew where it was supposed to be. And so we took our images. We're taking ours about 30 minutes apart, and we do 3, so we can actually submit that data to NASA for the work that they were doing. At that time, they were planning their mission to Bennu, OSIRIS-REx. So we were providing them data. Anyway, so we got these images, and of course it had our asteroid in it, and we got looking at the images, and there's a second asteroid that we weren't expecting. And we looked a little closer, there's a third asteroid. We'd never seen more than one in a set of frames before, and now all of a sudden we've got 3. So we're excited because, hey, these could be new. So sadly they weren't. I went out to the database, and they were both there. They just weren't ones I was looking for. But it was really cool. So yeah. And I can't
believe it once actually happened that we had 5 discoveries in one field, but that was unusual.
Again, depth,
But boy, it basically all the amateurs pretty much gave up around 2010 because the pond was just getting fished out, and also the rules were changed for awarding discovery credit, so it became much harder to get discoveries. So it was fun while it lasted, but it had an expiration date.
Oh, well. But yeah, cool.
All right, Aaron, I've got a couple other questions here for you. David Brown, are you still on?
I am, sorry.
No, not a problem. I think you had a question about submissions. Would you like to ask that, or?
Sure. So regarding submissions, are those done through the actual website? Is there a form to fill out, or is it strictly through email, or how does that work?
Pretty much it's through email. And the way it works is there's 2 ways. Well, it varies from program to program.
Right.
So I got to start with that. The original way was you would submit your submission to, that's kind of redundant, you would send your submission to the coordinator. And then most of the coordinators said, this is way too much work. We should set it up so that people at the club, so your Astronomical League coordinator, possibly your officers, again, it depends on which one you're submitting to, but those folks can pre-approve, take a look at it, see if you meet the requirements, and then all they do is send us an email, and we trust their judgment and take their word for it. So you can send it to the coordinator. That works. Some of them you have to send to the coordinator. Outreach is an example of that one. It probably would go through a coordinator of some kind in your club, but it has to go, the data, to the outreach coordinator. Target Neo is the same way. You have to submit the data. But other ones, like, and I'll pick Galileo as an example, we let any officer of the club approve that and just send us an email. So some have forms, but most it's a little bit looser than that. You have to provide all of the data that's required, but not on a set form. However, I will also make an offer here. Anyone who's interested, we do have a standard observing log in the form of a book. This is something I actually put together for the Astronomical League. You can buy them from the League. They're called a Visual Observer's Journal, I think is what the official title is. But I also have them here at the observatory. They're 12 bucks, includes postage. So if anybody's interested, again, just email me and I'll be more than happy to get you some of those as well, because I have a stack here. And it contains all the fields that are required for all of the observing programs, with the exception of some, like globular clusters, for example. You have to include concentration class. So there is no blank for that. You just have to put it in the notes. And there's a place to do a sketch, actually 2 places for sketches. We think they're really great. Last time I was actually at one of your meetings, I sold a few to some of you. So if anybody's interested, let me know. I'm not really trying to push them here. You brought it up, so I mentioned it. But if you look at the website, it'll describe what the different requirements are. Yeah. And what's important is not the form, but just make sure you meet all those requirements.
Yeah, and a name to remember for HAS members is Stephen Jones. So Stephen Jones is our vice president, but recently took over the Astronomical League coordinator responsibilities from Doug McCormick. So if you have any questions, you can always email Stephen Jones, STEPHENJ, at astronomyhouston.org, and he'll be able to help you with any of these questions that you might have. Okay, and Michael LeBlanc. Yeah, absolutely. Michael, are you there? I think you had a question as well.
Yes. Oh, hi. Yes. My question was about whether members of the public who are not necessarily members of our club can actually achieve certain awards or certificates. And what came to mind is this. I'm not sure if it'll show up, but the Explore the Universe book. That's from the RASC, the Canadian club, and they basically have this particular certificate that's open to everyone. And I think it's a good way to open it up, and especially for somebody who's just beginning. Does the AL have the equivalent?
So yes and no. Most of the observing program activities are designed for members. It's a membership benefit. And so most of them, you have to be a member. For some of them, though, it's not required. Sky Puppy is the best example. Sky Puppy is available to anybody. And again, as long as my funds don't run dry, we will send them free to anybody who wants one. In fact, if you want to do, and again, COVID is the wrong time to do this, but if you want to do a class, like you're a teacher and you want to do it for all of your 5th graders, they're too old, 4th graders, then great. Tell me how many you need. I'll send them to you and get after it. And there are pins and certificates. And so we will send those out. A little bit of paperwork. Well, actually, the paperwork is lessened now because I don't have to report back to NASA anymore. So it's better. Anyway, so that one is one. The observing challenges. So the AL challenges as well as the NASA challenges are open to anybody. The NASA ones had to be because NASA was helping fund them. But we're doing the AL challenges the same way. They only have certificates, so there's really no cost. I mean, or minimal. Mm-hmm. And we email you the certificates, so we don't even have to print them out for you. We've discussed that. We discussed it for the Youth Observer, and we've also discussed it for Beyond Polaris, but at this point, we have not taken that leap.
And do you think you could also expand the some of the books that you mentioned, like the one that's $12 there? A lot of that could be just as a PDF. Would it be would more of those be available over time? Because it seems like it's a way for, again, to save money and to just enable a broader distribution of the material.
Okay, so can I be blunt?
Yes.
I'm gonna have to be real blunt here. The Astronomical League, the store, views that as a moneymaker.
Mhm.
So if I offer them an electronic form, I'm digging into their pockets. So I understand what you say, and I agree. And certainly the observing forms, if anybody wants an observing form, just send me an email, because it's the same form in the book, is the exact same form I pass out to my students. So I've got it, and would be more than happy to give it to anybody. So that is not an issue. I mean, the books are nice because they're bound. They have 100+ pages, which means they're perfect for an observing program. The only real downside of the book is it's not electronic. So if you're submitting, if you have somebody in your club, that's great. You have them review it. You can give them their book. But I don't want you to send the book in because I don't trust the post office. So
Okay. All right. Thanks.
but yeah, thank you.
All right, Aaron, really appreciate the talk tonight. I hope for those of you who are new to the Astronomical League and some of these programs, you leave this meeting with some new excitement about these programs. Like I said, without these programs, I didn't really have much structure to my observing, and I couldn't imagine doing observing programs without them. So the great thing is you have these available to you as a member of the Houston Astronomical Society. You also have the HAS Texas 45 that is our own homegrown program that Renee Gadaley will be talking about, I think, at the novice meeting, not next month, but the month after. And once you get started on these things, I don't know if you could see this hat, but you will be known as a pin collector. So there are some people whose hats I've seen are probably heavier than a stack of books because of the number of pins that they have on them. But it's a wonderful thing. And again, Aaron, thank you very much. And we'll definitely take you up on an HAS night at the Inspirity Observatory soon. So we appreciate that invitation. Last thing I wanted to mention, kind of a shameless plug. This is the Universe Sampler, which is developed by our very own Amelia Goldberg. So this is a wonderful program if you're looking to get started. It does have a requirement for telescope observing. So if you do have a telescope, you're looking to get started and want a good sampler, like it says in the name, of different objects to view, that's a great one to start. But we'll start taking a look at other programs similar to the to Beyond Polaris that may be good for beginners and start running more programs for that. So again, Aaron, thank you very much.
Cool.